Unit 1. Climate change and its impact on human lives. Climate change is reshaping our world, affecting every one of us in varying degrees. From shifting weather patterns that disrupt food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of severe flooding, the impact is widespread. Vulnerable communities, especially women and children, bear the brunt of these changes. Have you ever thought about how your everyday life is already being affected by climate change? What about the communities that are far more vulnerable? How are they coping? In this video, you learn about the impact of climate change on agriculture, natural resources, and human lives. We'll also explore the connection between environmental changes and the effect of climate change. If climate change is affecting everything from the food we eat to the air we breathe, what can we do in our daily lives to address these impacts? Are weather and climate the same thing? Not exactly. We see changes in our environment daily, even hourly, like temperature, humidity, and wind. These are all aspects of weather which can change rapidly from one day to the next. Climate, on the other hand, refers to the weather patterns of a place over a long period, typically 30 years. For example, Malawi experiences warm, wet weather from November to April, while Pakistan generally has an arid climate with hot summers and cool winters. If weather affects us every day, and climate determines long-term patterns, how should we be preparing for the climate shifts we're already starting to see? So, what is climate change? Earth's climate has been naturally changing for millions of years, with cycles of warming and cooling. However, since the 1990s, human activities have significantly accelerated this process, leading to more rapid and dangerous warming. Higher temperatures due to climate change contribute to more frequent altered wind patterns and extreme weather events. If human activity is speeding up these changes, what responsibilities do we bear in slowing them down? Can individual action make a difference? Why is this happening? Earth's atmosphere contains a protective layer of gases, including nitrogen, oxygen, and tiny amounts of greenhouse gases, or GHGs. These GHGs trap heat in the atmosphere, keeping Earth warm enough for life. But human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation are increasing the concentration of GHGs, especially carbon dioxide or CO2 and methane CH4. This causes more heat to be trapped, leading to a global warming and consequently climate change. What are the small daily activities in your life, like commuting or using electricity, that contribute to greenhouse gas emissions? How could changing those habits help slow global warming? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, warns that Earth has already warmed by nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit or 1.1 degrees Celsius since the late 19th century, with devastating consequences. If global temperature rises by more than 2 degrees Celsius, impacts will become increasingly harmful. Climate change affects every aspect of life on Earth. It leads to higher temperatures, rising sea levels, and more acidic oceans, causing water shortages, food insecurity, and damage to the ecosystems. How prepared are you and your community for more extreme weather events? Could you imagine a future where food and water becomes scarce because of climate change? Agriculture is particularly vulnerable to climate change. Higher temperatures can reduce crop yields, especially in countries like Malawi and Mozambique that rely on temperature-sensitive crops like maize. Changes in rainfall pattern lead to severe flood and droughts, degrading soil quality and increasing erosion. The results? Lower food production and higher risk of food shortages. What if the food you rely on every day became unavailable or too expensive? How would your community cope with food shortages caused by climate change? Flooding, soil erosion, and rise in pests due to changing weather patterns put an additional burden on farmers. Small farmers are particularly vulnerable, often lacking the resources to adapt, which traps them further into poverty. Can we afford to let the most vulnerable farmers bear the brunt of climate change? How can wealthier countries and communities support those most at risk? Climate change also impacts natural resources. Water crises are becoming more common, especially in already vulnerable areas. Women and young girls often bear the heaviest burden, walking long distances to fetch water for their families. How can we ensure access to clean, safe water for all people, especially as climate change worsens drought and water scarcity? Ecosystems are losing their resilience. Rising temperatures are turning snow-capped mountains into warm areas, thus bringing in new species and threatening existing ones. Desert ecosystems are either getting drier or receiving excessive rainfall, challenging their ability to sustain life. As we see ecosystems changing, which species, both plant and animals, will be lost? And how will that loss affect our own survival? Climate change doesn't just affect the environment, it affects human health and livelihoods too, particularly for those dependent on agriculture and natural resources. It increases the prevalence of heat-related illnesses, respiratory diseases, and even vector-borne diseases like malaria. Extreme weather events such as hurricane, floods, and droughts are becoming more frequent and severe, displacing communities and creating climate refugees. What if your community faced this type of health crises and displacement due to climate change? How would you rebuild your life? Climate change is contributing to more frequent and intense natural disasters, disruption to agriculture, and changes in seasonal weather patterns. Communities in ecologically fragile areas are especially vulnerable to these impacts. By raising awareness and understanding the local effects of climate change, we can work together to strengthen community preparedness and resilience. How can your community come together to mitigate the impacts of climate change? What steps can you take today to build a more resilient future? Our future depends on our actions today. Let's take responsibility and act against climate change. The real question is, what will you do? This publication was made possible through the funding provided by Global Affairs Canada under the Empowering Women and Girls project. The Commonwealth of Learning wishes to thank the contributors to this video: Kuntal D, Sunday Hertz, Frances Ferreira, Cyrus Kithuva, and Collins Omondi.